Rockstar gang, what up? What up? Welcome to the Rockstar Report. Appreciate everyone joining the live stream. We got Mad Chatter in the chat. We got Panthers World in the chat. We've got Marcos Cash in the chat. Marcos Cash is always doing it up for me. Don't forget to wipe your paws on that like button on your way in. Yes, make sure you pound that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And make sure you click that post notifications bell so you don't miss out on any new live streams and all of the other stuff that I post. All right. Always posting stuff. And you can also join the Discord of this family that we're trying to grow over here at the Rockstar gang. Trying to grow it. We're trying to grow. We're growing, but it's just taking some time, but we just got to keep at it. And it's tough. I was listening to a podcast before I came on here. It's tough coming live every day. It's tough making content for this team. It's very tough when your team is 2-14. You're got to be an embarrassment for an owner. It's tough. It's very tough to come on here every day, and especially come on here and have a smile on my face. But I love football so much. I love the Carolina Panthers so much, and I'm here. You know what I mean? I'm here. I take the time out of my day to bring y'all some wonderful content daily. Every single day, Monday through Friday. So it's tough, but here we are. This is it. Yeah, Josh, that's Mad Chatter. That's Mad Chatter. He's getting ready for the XFL season. He's getting ready for the XFL season now. It's kind of gotten to where we are, right? So today, guys, we are going to properly rebuild the Carolina Panthers. All right. We are going to properly rebuild the Carolina Panthers, okay? And there's multiple scenarios. There's multiple ways that we can go about this, right? I have been working very diligently and hard and thinking about how can we properly do this. Now, of course, all right, properly do this, right? How can we now obviously this is my mindset. This is my blueprint of what I'm thinking we can do to rebuild the Carolina Panthers, because all we've done over the years, right, is retooled. The problem we've also had is that we've had an owner who's constantly brought in yes men. All right. So that's the issue, right? That's an issue. Scott Fitter, yes man. Matt Rule, yes man. The only person I think here that kept the keep pounding culture going that we've had is Steve Wilkes, right? And you let him walk, and then of course you got Scott Fitter, who's a yes man. Frank Wright, whether he's a yes man or not, that's kind of hard to decide based off of this season. But I think again, there's so many issues to go about this. The biggest thing is that we have David Tepper. The first thing to going into this rebuild, right, is they need to seriously, and this is what I've been posting up on Twitter. So I'm using Twitter today for you guys to show you properly what I've been doing. Okay. So here's the thing. All right. On Twitter, I posted up the rebuild part 1. This is part 1. Okay. First things first, that I didn't add into this because obviously Twitter, you can only put so much characters in there, right? The thing is David Tepper, number one, has to realize and take accountability and responsibility for his actions. Not just the throwing of the drink and his temper tantrums that he has. It's also has to do with the hires, the fires, and the bad moves that he has been involved with within this organization to make, right? So what do you do? Well, you got to get someone in there that's going to be willing to stand up to him. You have to get a guy that's going to come in and is going to stand up to this guy and say, hey, you brought me in as the GM. You brought me in as the head coach. And those guys got to come together and say, hey, you brought me in. I'm going to do it my way. You need to sit back and take a seat and watch what happens when you actually aren't involved in meddling with football operations and you're letting the football minds be football minds, right? So first things first, you got to get Scott Fitter out of there. The guy's resume speaks for itself, right? He's made terrible trades, traded away Christian McCaffrey, you traded away DJ Moore, then you traded your mortgage away to get Bryce Young. Now, obviously, with this rebuild, whether we know Bryce is at least going to be here another year, maybe 2 at least, right? We know that, right? What's up, Supernova in the chat? Again, you got to fire Scott Fitter. You have to get him out of here. So all the trades, all the signings have not adequately done anything really to help this football team. Okay? You got to get him out. And the scout team here. Those guys have got to go. You can't hire within here either. You cannot go within the candidacies of what we have in that front office. So everybody has to go. This is a rebuild. So fire sale is on, basically. Okay? Targets for GMs. I named a few here. I got Adam Peters, of course, out of San Francisco. Love what he's done over there. Look what they've done in the draft. Look who they've brought in. And look how that team has panned out. Now, of course, Shanahan, as a head coach, is a genius. He's an offensive guru, but he is a hell of a head coach. All right. They have built that team from the ground up, and they have literally gotten weapons around a guy that they got in the 6th or 7th round. And even though if you want to call Purdy a game manager, they're winning football games, right? Charles Waltz, he's from the assistant GM over there, the Eagles. That's a guy you could look at. Rob Lohman or Agnew over there in Detroit, one of the two. Rob Lohman is a guy that Marcos Cash mentioned to me. I've looked up his resume, what that guy's done. He's basically an assistant GM, or basically Agnew's right-hand man, and he's the head of scouting there. And what they've done through the draft over there in Detroit is nothing but great. Nothing but great. If you go look at the Detroit's draft, this is the reason why they are where they are. So, head coach. So the next head coach, right? The next head coach has just got to be a culture-changing guy. We have got to get back to the keep pounding days, the winning ways of what Carolina football was. The head coach, and if you can, I put in there, try to keep Evero as a DC. Yes, if you can do that, that would be awesome. I don't know if that's going to be possible, but again, you never know. Names have been mentioned around this team, right? Like Frank Smith, the offensive coordinator over in Miami. Ben Johnson in Detroit, Bill Belichick, Jim Harbaugh, Eric Bieniemy. All right. Mike McDonald, right? Over there, the defensive coordinator in Baltimore. Those guys have all been mentioned. There's multiple names. Dan Quinn's another one that's been mentioned, right? There's multiple names here, but are single one of those guys culture changers? No. Ben Johnson would be a first-year head coach. Frank Smith would be a first-year head coach. Mike McDonald would be a first-year head coach. I've even seen Brian Flores' name thrown around. Okay, you know what I mean? Brian Flores' name has been thrown around. I think he could be a culture-changing head coach. He could bring that keep pounded mentality back here. So, the Belichicks, the Jim Harbaughs of the world, the Mike Tomlins of the world, those are the guys that you want. They're culture-changing head coach. Those are guys that it's very, very hard to find, right? Those guys don't come around in the NFL but once in a century, okay? But that's what you need. You have to have a guy that comes in here and brings back that winning culture of keep pounding here in Carolina, right? And then I put up there, look to trade these players. Burns, Chen, Dante Jackson, Terrace Marshall Jr., Hurst, Sanders, maybe more, right? There may be more. Obviously with Burns, that whole situation, we don't know what's going on with that. We don't know what's going on in his camp. We don't know if he still wants that $30 million contract, but has he earned that $30 million contract to me? No. He's been playing more like a guy that earned what he's going to get tagged for, a $21 million contract. Okay? So the question is there, do they tag him or trade him, and tag him and trade him, or do they sign him? Right? You don't have a first round pick this year. So are you going to be able to get that first round pick back this year and be able to get a first round pick with Brian Burns and more, because you want to get compensated more for him because he is very good. This year, he's been on a slump, whether that's on the personnel, the coaching side, or whether that's in the situation of what it has been here in Carolina. That is something that we will see coming up after Sunday's game. We will see the offseason starts after this Sunday game against Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Jeremy Chinn, you see his name up there, Chinn. Not using him. He's not a nickel corner. He is a safety. He is best at the safety position. We've seen that in his rookie season. He should have never been moved. He should have stayed. They should have kept him where he was and never moved him out the way. Okay. Number 3 on that list to look to trade these guys is Dante Jackson. Again, I've been on this thing about Dante Jackson trading him because you can save $15.8 million in cap space. You could sign a guy like a Marquise Brown because you need wide receiver help, which we're going to talk more about those guys here shortly. You can sign a guy like Marquise Brown, which you need wide receiver help, for that price, maybe even less. Terrace Marshall Jr., waste of a second round pick, has not panned out as everybody thought that he would. And whether that's on him or whether that's because of what's going on in the circumstances here in Carolina. Again, there is multiple scenarios. There's multiple issues. What exactly is the issue? And of course, it's always, for me, starts from the top, right? So that's why we're breaking it down today on how to rebuild this team. Hurst is another one. He's doing us, we're paying him more than what he's putting out there. So for me, Hurst has got to go. I've seen more out of Tommy Trimble and Steven Sullivan than I have with Hayden Hurst. Sanders, you've done us more bad than good. You're just hurting us every time you step on the field with the fumbles, barely getting any yards. The way he runs just does not fit here. I've been saying, though, what the Carolina needs to do with him is use him on the outside and use Chuber down in the middle. We need that two-headed monster. We got to get back to the run games that we used to. Remember what this team was built off of was the run game. If you think about it, when the Jonathan Stewart days, the D'Angelo Williams days, that's how Carolina won football games. Yes, Cam Newton was definitely part of that. He was a game changer when he came in. But Jonathan Stewart and D'Angelo Williams, those guys made that keep pounding culture in the run game what it is that we still know to this day, that we remember, right? So this is part 1 of my rebuild. Let's get into part 2. Guys, as you're coming in, make sure you pound that like button. Get in the comment section. Love to hear y'all's thoughts as we go throughout this, all right? So, some free agent targets that we can go after, okay? All right, you can go after T. Higgins. You could go after Hollywood Brown, Calvin Ridley. All these guys are going to be free agents, okay? Now, when it comes to each and every one of these guys, there's a different story about them, right? T. Higgins, what's his contract going to look like, right? I don't know. Okay. Yeah, exactly. Marcos Cash. That's kind of where I'm trying to go with this. Now, again, what the contracts right now? Right now, he's projected just a franchise tag, right there in Cincinnati. Whether he takes that or not is the question. Of course, that's another issue that comes upon this whole situation. Is he going to take the franchise tag, or is he going to try to go elsewhere and find that big contract? I've seen contracts for him around 40, around 4 years, like 90 something, like $90 million, something crazy like that. Is T. Higgins worth that? I'm not so sure. All right. I'm not so sure. Yeah, he will have multiple offers, in my opinion. I don't see him coming here, but these are guys listen, I'm not saying that these guys are going to come here, guys, just to let you know. These guys are just people I'm targeting, okay? Now, when it comes to Hollywood Brown, okay, I was looking at it up. His contract projection is around 1 year, 12 mil. So again, that's for a guy like him who basically the Ravens traded him for a 3rd round pick to the Cardinals in 2022 for a 1st round pick. Arizona has had its journey with him. He's had his own injuries. But he's a solid comparable player who's 5'9", 180 pounds. He's an outside wide receiver. He adds more of that architecture type player. It's fair to wonder though also what's going on over there in the Arizona, if he wants to if they want to extend anyone, given their timeline there. The emergence of the wideout that they got, Michael Wilson over there in the Cardinals, maybe they just go that route and keep him instead, and they move on from Marquise. Is Josh Allen edge, is he better than Burns? Josh Allen this year has had a better year than Brian Burns has. Josh Allen, I think, has over 13 and a half sacks, and definitely deserves a Pro Bowl recommendation. So I don't know if he's got it or not. Devontae Smith, wide receiver. Yeah, he's also another free agent that we could target. Again, that's going to be a big contract. I could see that being more like the T. Higgins contract, a 4-year, 90 mil. But again, I could see it because of the Bryce connection there. But I don't know if Devontae Smith is going to leave the Eagles. All right. I don't know if he's going to leave a team that's contending right now for a team that's in a full rebuild mode, right? Did you not see what Josh Allen did to Bryce last Sunday? Daniel Hunter. Yeah, we're going to get more into the defense here shortly, Matt Chatter. So those are guys that I'm targeting there. Ridley's a free agent as well. Dalton Schultz, Hunter Henry, those are guys I was targeting as well. Noah Fant, all the just to bring in, right? If they decide to move on from Hurst. These are guys that are experienced. Dalton Schultz has been a solid tight end. He was solid in the Cowboys camp 2 years ago. He's been solid this year with the Texans. Hunter Henry, he's a guy that's always been solid. These are great. These are also great blocking tight ends as well. They block very well, but they also get open. So here's some guards. Kevin Dotson, Robert Hunt, Kevin Zietler, they all play the right guard position. The reason why I went with all right guard is because of Austin Corbett. Because of Austin Corbett now has not only torn that ACL, but he's torn the MCL in it. And his career could be in jeopardy after those 2 injuries. So for free agency, these are the guys that I was targeting. Tyron Smith, Trent Brown, left tackles. Whether you want to go that route or not, that's fine by me. I mean, again, if everybody in here in the chat still thinks that you need to move Icky to left guard, that this is a route that you can go. You can target these guys and maybe, sign these guys, and instead of going in the draft and going after them. Again, the free agents market is something we're going to have to hit hard. So this is part 2 of the rebuild that I was wanting to talk about. So these are some free agent targets I like. I think that, if you want to move Icky to left tackle and you don't want to go in the draft, you could go with a Tyron Smith or Trent Brown. I think that a free agent market for the right guard position would be a right move to go instead of in the draft, especially depending on if we make any trades. Again, these free agents, it depends on the moves that they make, right? Depends on the moves that they make when it comes to making trades this offseason, right? There's guys that I want to trade that I think that we could get some assets back for within the draft. Now, if you don't want to go the draft route, again, this is a way that you can go. All right. Now, the question is what's the cap space going to be like, right? Right now, I think the cap space for the Carolina Panthers is around $68 million coming into 2024. Let me look. So let's look at the cap space real quick. So right now, 2024, adjusted salary cap's at 248 million. Active contracts are at 203. So dead cap going into 2024, where we have 4.8 million in dead cap. So right now, the estimated cap that we do have right now shows $39 million. Okay. Which means then you're going to have to maneuver some guys around. Again, it all depends on who they re-sign as well, right? It all depends on who they re-sign as well. If they extend Derek Brown, they extend Luvu, that cap space is going to move. It all depends on how much they spend. So right now it's at 39 million. So if they can maneuver some cap space, now they can open up some, contract offers to, whatever free agents they want. And whoever they decide to target. Let me look at something else here. Where's everyone? I'm getting pissed. It's all good, man. It's all good. So let's move on. Let's move on to the part three. Part three. So rebuild part three. You got some draft targets here. The question here is, again, do you move Icky to the left guard or not? Right? That's the question here. Because if you do, with the 33rd pick, do you go ahead and take a tackle there with the 33rd pick? I would say so. I would say you take an offensive line. If you're gonna move Icky to the left guard, you have to take an offensive left tackle there. And at that 33 spot, I've seen those three guys available at that left tackle position at that number 33 spot. Now, again, though, I've also seen these types of wide receivers like Emeka Egbuka, Xavier Legette, Adonia Mitchell. I've even seen Xavier Worthy. I've even seen Johnny Wilson. I've seen Troy Franklin at those 33 positions when I've done mock drafts. Now, those are mock drafts. But if those guys do fall and you decide to keep Icky at left tackle, then I would say, okay, well, if we're going to do that, we might as well go ahead and get some wide receiver help. And then at the 65th pick, if that's the route they decide to go, it all depends on that second round pick to where they pick at 65 in the third round. Because if they decide to go tackle, you get a wide receiver at 65. If you decide to go, which you could get like a Malachi Corley at that 65th pick if they go tackle, or you go wide receiver, right? And then you get a guard like a Cedric Van Pran, or you go and get a guard like, Cooper Beebe, or, something like that. There's going to be multiple guys that you can go after here at this position. I've been putting together a draft board together for each and every position for the draft prospects. And there's multiple draft prospects that you can go and find really good talent, I think, in those positions. I don't think that in this draft, between the offensive line, the wide receivers, the tight ends, the running backs, I would even say you could even find some sneaky picks in the defensive line, corner, linebacker. This draft is really big for that, like those positions mainly. And you can find some sneaky late round picks, in my opinion. But like at this 33rd pick, you're going to be able to get, like I was saying, offensive line. You're going to be able to get like the Troy Fanatu if you want to get a left tackle, Jordan Morgan or Patrick Paul there. Okay. If you decide to go that route, again, like I said, if you decide to go that route, you're going to be able to get a guy in that third round. I'm telling you, you'll be able to get a guy like, I would probably say, like, I've even seen Troy Franklin fall to the third round, but I'm not saying you're going to be able to get in there. I've seen Keon Coleman go to the third round, but I'm not saying that either. I think Brian Thomas will probably go in the first. I think both of the LSU wide receivers will go in the first round. I've seen Jermaine Burton available there. I've seen Lad Monkey there. I've seen Jalen Polk at the third round. I've seen Malachi Corley at the third round. Torrey Horton in the third round. Roman Wilson in the third round. Brandon Rice at the third round. So there's other wide receivers that they could get if they decide to go that route and get that go with the offensive line. All right. It all depends on what they decide to do. Whoever the next GM is, right? Whatever they decide to do to rebuild this team properly. This is just my aspect of things is, if you want to move, again, if you want to move Ickey, fine, move him, but you got to go left tackle and with that second round pick. It also comes down to too with this is with the draft targets here on the offensive side. Do they trade Brian Burns for a first round pick? Are they going to be able to get a first round pick for Brian Burns? That is another question. Because if they're able to get a first round pick for Brian Burns, then that could change what this draft order would look like. And again, it also depends if they decide to move Ickey to left guard. If that is even something that's even being talked about. You know, that's even something like, yeah, we're talking about it. Some media, some articles have talked about it. But is it actually being talked about in that front office? Right? Moving Ickey to left guard. Again, that's another thing, though. If you move Ickey to left guard, you're paying Ickey $20 million to play left guard. So that's another issue. Right? So I think that's what it also comes down to. There's multiple scenarios that we can go within this route, right? Guys, as you're coming in, make sure you pound that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Greatly appreciate it. Feel free to get in the chat as you're coming in. So this is my part 3. So let's get into part 4. Here are some defensive questions that we've got to answer with this rebuild mode. Can the Carolina Panthers keep Evero? I think it depends on the GM, the next GM, and the next head coach that comes in here. And if he's willing to continue to be the defensive coordinator here. I think that Evero's phone is going to be hammered with people calling him to be a next head coach. I could see the Chargers going after him with the defense that they have over there. You know, I could see multiple teams going after this man for a head coaching job. And it wouldn't surprise me if he just moves on. Because of this whole Tepper situation. Another question is, does Brian Burns really want to be here? Does he really want to be here? I know he said it multiple times. He's come out to the media after games and says he wants to be here. He wants to be a Carolina Panther for all of his career. But again, can they afford Burns? Is Burns going to come down on his price? Basically going to come down on his worth and say, nah, I'm okay with accepting this. I just don't see a player who is all off season saying he wanted to get paid $30 million for a contract, right? Per year, and come off of that. I just don't see it. Another thing is, if that's the case and you can't afford him, what's the next step? Do you tag him and trade him? Of course, that's what you would have to do. All right. I believe that you trade Birds and you build around Frankie Louvu and Derek Brown. Derek Brown this season has shown me more out of him than anybody else on that defensive side of the ball. Derek Brown has been a man amongst boys this season. Okay. Number 2, Louvu has been another exceptional player who plays sideline to sideline, and every single play, it looks like he's just giving his all, like it's his last. And that's what I like to see from a linebacker like Frankie Louvu. I haven't seen a guy play like that. I'm not saying that he's Luke Kuechly. Not saying he's Luke Kuechly. I just haven't seen a guy play as hard as he does, like a Luke Kuechly, in a long time. So I'm not saying that Louvu is Luke Kuechly. Just saying, because Luke Kuechly was a total different level. Luke Kuechly could dissect offenses really quick. So, and he knew the play before it was even happening. So he knew it. That's something that we haven't had since his days, right? So these are just some burning questions. Can they keep Evero? Does Brian Burns really want to be here? Can Carolina afford him? What do you do with Burns? Do you tag him and trade him, or do you sign him? Again, I just believe that, you trade Birds, you build around Brown and Louvu, because I've seen more production out of them than Burns has. And Burns, whether it's because he has an injury or whether he is just checked out, he has stood on his business and said, I'm still going to play even though they haven't re-signed me. So I respect him for that. But at the same time, we have to think about our future here. We have to do a true rebuild. This is where Carolina is at, unfortunately. So we might have to part ways with certain players that we may not want to, but we're going to have to. All right. So here's some defensive free agents targets that I think that we could, let's just say that they do. Let's say they sign Derek Brown. Let's say they extend Frankie Louvu, right? Let's say they sign those guys over Burns. They trade him. You could get a guy like a Daniel Hunter. You could get a guy like a Bryce Huff, a Chase Young, something like that. Again, these guys are not going to getting, they're not going to be, some of these guys, their contracts aren't going to be too crazy. Like, for example, as you're looking at this. So, for example, I've seen now Justin Matabuki that you see up there from the Ravens. His contract right now would look like probably around 4 years, $92 million, right? That's 23 per year. So it'd be like $60.25 million guaranteed. That's what that guy's looking for. He plays like a Javon Hargrave. He's a very good pass rusher. Could build up his defensive run defense. But other than that, he's a great pass rusher in the defensive line. Christian Wilkins, that's another guy. You can look at right now. A lot of these guys like Burns, Josh Allen, Christian Wilkins. A lot of them are franchise tags. A lot of projections are franchise tags. Now, another guy on this list that you see here, like Jalen Johnson, I've seen his for a franchise tag. I've got L'Jarius Sneed. That's a 3-year, $52.5 million contract. It's $17.5 million per year. That's what his projection looks like right now, around $35 million guaranteed. And that's the reason why I put some corners up here is just in case they decide to move on from Dante Jackson, which we're going to get more into that cap space ordeal. Daniel Hunter, I've seen his contract projected around 3 years, $65 million. So it's like $21.67 million per year, $40 million guaranteed. So that's what I've seen. Kendall Fuller, I've seen his projected contracts around 3 years, 40 million, 13.3 million guaranteed per year, basically $25 million guaranteed. Bryce Huff is another one. I've seen his 3 years, 40 million, 13.3 million per year, 28 million guaranteed. DJ Reader's another one I've seen out there. 3 years, $45.7 million contract, 15.25 million per year. So it's like 29.75 million guaranteed. So there's, you're going to have to pay these guys. You're going to have to pay these guys some hefty amount of money. That's the free agent market right now, though. Yeah, I know, Matt Chatter. We gave Saquon Barkley got a nice or it's going to be a free agent. Derrick Henry is a free agent. You chose to pick a guy that was behind one of the best offensive lines, who had one of his best seasons behind them, and you chose to go with him and pay him a $25 million contract for 4 years with $16 million guaranteed. It's ridiculous. And you're paying him basically, I think it's like something around $6 million a year. So Chase Young, you could get him. Apparently his projected contract offer is around 1 million, 15, 1 year for 15 mil. I mean, I don't know, but these are guys you can just look at. These are guys that I'm just saying we could target. I think Frankie Louvu's contract is going to be probably like a 3-year deal, 30 million. It's probably going to be 10 million per year, 17 million guaranteed. That's what we're looking at. I would say for him, that's what I would project his contract at, right? But these are just guys defensively we could target. Like I said, up there, it depends on multiple scenarios, right? If they decide to extend if they either decide to extend Burns, Louvu, and Brown, I mean, they could try to do that. Or they just trade Burns and they extend Brown and Louvu, whatever the case may be. But there's multiple scenarios here, and it depends on the cap space, right? Can they afford them? So here is some cap savings that we could do, right? Von Bell, if you trade him, whatever the case may be, you save $7 million, 13.8 mil in dead cap. Thielen, 8.25 million. You say, so you would save 1.6 million in dead cap. D-Jack, you save 15.81 million, straight up. And TMJ, you save 1.4. You only take about 381 million in dead cap. And then Hurst, you're going to take more dead cap, but again, you're going to save 2.25 million. And if you add that up all together, I mean, you're saving around 33 million. And if you add that onto the cap space next year, that will put us at around $70 million in cap space. So if they decide to go this route, I mean, these are just guys that I was pulling up contracts that we possibly can move on from. Because if anything, if we did move on from Von Bell, and let's say they decide to keep Jeremy Chin, they put Chin back into his position. You move on from Bell, you save $7 million. You just take 3.8 mil in dead cap. And then, of course, I know Thielen is not, I know a lot of people don't want to trade Thielen because of how much of an option he has been for Bryce Young. But again, does Thielen want to be here? I just don't think Thielen wants to be here anymore. He even spilled the tea in December when he said that plans change, and plans do change. So, if he wants to move on, We could save 8.25 million, and we would only take like 1.6 million dead cap. Dante Jackson is the big one, though. We have to move on from Dante Jackson out of anyone if we want to save some cap space, because it's $15.8 million in his last year of his contract, and that's what we would be hammered with. And we wouldn't take any dead cap. Now, if we would have got rid of Dante Jackson at the trade deadline, it would only saved us around 10-something million, and would have put us around like 3-something million in dead cap. But in this scenario, now that he's played through the full season, this offseason, if he's going into this last year of that contract, you could save 15.8 million if you trade him. I'm just saying, I think that's a smart move. I can't see a scenario of us moving on from Sanders, unfortunately, due to the fact of how much they're paying him, and the dead cap would be more than the savings, way more than the savings. The only big hit out of this group, though, right here is Hurst. Another person they could trade is Ian Thomas. You would save around like 1.8 million, something like that. And the dead cap would only be like something like TMJ, which was like 381. So you could save another extra, $1 million if you wanted to trade these guys. But again, if you trade all those guys together, you take a dead cap hit, but your savings is a lot more. And you only have 40 mil going into us going into 2024. We only have 40 mil in cap space, basically. You save yourself around $30 to $33 million in cap space to add on to that to, go into the free agency, because then you can sign more guys. You could sign some guys to come in here, better talent, and rebuild this thing properly. Again, especially the offensive line, because the offensive linemen are going to get paid. Most of those guys, I was looking at some of them, like the ones I was mentioning earlier, and that post right here with these free agent targets. Where's it at? Right here. So these guys right here, like the guards, those guards, they're going to be wanting big contracts. I wouldn't say necessarily they're massive, but that's how much. Like, for example, let me find the guy's contract that I was looking at. I think it was, so for example, Tyron Smith wouldn't be too bad. It'd only be like 1 year, 10 mil. Okay. If you go down, let me go down this list real quick. Let me find the other guy I was looking at. Trent Brown. Is he on that list? Yeah. Trent Brown's another one. He'd be a 2 year, 15 million. 7.5 per year. It would be an 8.5 million guarantee contract. Kevin Dotson would be a pretty hefty one. It's going to be like a 4 year, $69 million contract, 41 mil guaranteed, which comes out to like 17 million per year. Let's see who else. Robert Hunt, that's another one, 4 year, 70 mil, 42 million guaranteed, another one for that guard position. Let me see if I can find my other guard on here on this list. Okay, Zietler, that's another one. It's 2 years, 15 million, 9.5 million guaranteed. So you might be able to, that's what I'm saying with this cap space. You might be able to, sign some of these guys. All right, with the cap space. So it all depends on these scenarios that they can go. So I'm hearing not a lot of guards in this draft. There is actually a pretty decent amount of guards, my friend. I did a mock draft this morning. I don't know if you can see that or not. Maybe I'll make it bigger. But I did a mock draft this morning. And so I traded Brian Burns to the Seattle Seahawks. All right. Did a mock draft this morning. I traded Brian Burns to the Seattle Seahawks. I got a first, their third, and then I gave them our 6th round pick. Was able to get Brian Thomas. I went with Brian Thomas in the first round. And then I took Jordan Morgan in the second as I was moving Icky to left guard. Then what I did was I got T'Vondre Sweat to add in some inside help to Derek Brown. And then I took another wide receiver in the third round, Jalen McMillan out of Washington. And then I took Trey Benson, a big, heavy running back, right? A big, heavy running back. And that third, I was able to trade for that third for that number 99 pick there. I was able to get trade Jeremy Chin for that third pick. And the reason why I was able to get an extra third round too was because in that Burns trade, that's why I was able to get Jalen McMillan. So then in the fourth round, I went at the 101 pick there. I took Marshawn Kinley, an edge rusher, to kind of fill in that void of losing Brian Burns, a guy that we could bring in. Obviously, he would be a developmental talent, but he's very good. He's a top 10 edge rusher in this draft. Top 15 at best, I think, as well. I've seen him at around number 11 or 12 ranked edge rusher in this draft. Center position, Cedric Van Pran. This guy's going to be a franchise center. I was able to get him at the 107 pick because I was traded Hayden Hurst for him. And all of these trades, again, are also helping me in the cap space. So that's another reason why I do these mock drafts the way that I'm doing it. But Cedric Van Pran is going to be a starting center in the NFL. I don't care where he goes. If it's not Carolina, he's going to be a starting center. Another thing is Zach Zener. I got him at the 110 pick. I was able to trade Terrace Marshall to the Chicago Bears for him. Got that 110 pick, and I got us a right guard. Somebody that is very, very talented on that Michigan offensive line. We saw what they did against Alabama. That offensive line is dominant there at Michigan. They've got a lot of great players and upcoming players out of that university. Took Zach Zinter there, who's a right guard. And I was able to get him because of the Terrace Marshall trade. Then I traded Dante Jackson, again, cap space move, to get a tight end, and A.J. Barner there in Michigan, who's one of the top 5 tight ends in this draft class. Then I was able to trade Ian Thomas because he's just done nothing for us since he's been here. So I was able to get Kyrie Jackson, and that's a corner that I like in this draft. And you were able to replace positions that you traded away. The only position I didn't move, obviously get back, was Jeremy Chin, but I'm still thinking that Von Bell's still here, Xavier Woods still here, right? All right. So, and then the last 2 picks really were just value picks. Okay, Jamin Dumas Johnson and Tony Grimes. That's all it was. That's all it was. So, again, this is just a projection. This is just a blueprint of what I think the Carolina Panthers need to do. You know, it starts from the top, like I said here. It starts from the top. You're firing Scott Fitter, bringing somebody that's not a yes man in for Mr. David Tepper to push around, and you get a GM that's competent enough to bring in talent like these guys, like Adam Peters, Charles Waltz, Rob Lohman, or heck, if you want to bring in try to get Agnew, sure. But again, it comes down to, like I said at the beginning of the show with this first part, you got to get a culture-changing head coach. We've got to get back to the keep pounding ways. And then, of course, look to trade these players: Burns, Chen, D-Jack, TMJ, Hurst, Sanders. I would also recommend Ian Thomas. You could also look to trade YGM. I've seen his name thrown around to be traded. You could also look to trade Von Bell. I've even heard that he could be a possible trade piece. So, you know, that's just the start of it. Then you got to start targeting free agent targets. You know, you got to look at the cap space, look at these guys' contracts that they're looking for, you know, see if it fits. Some of these guys might not fit. Again, it all depends on multiple scenarios. Because when it comes down to any of this rebuilding, right? When it comes down to doing any of this rebuilding, folks, it comes down to all the scenarios that can happen. Whether they trade or whether they sign or they tag and trade Burns, right? So that's number one. Number two, how much, you know, how much do they, if they do that, then they're going to extend Luvu and Brown. How much is their contract's going to look like, right? You got Austin Corbett, who's going to probably, his career is basically over with that MCL injury on top of the ACL that he already tore in that knee, right? Right. And then, again, so you got to fill the right guard position. What's up with Brady Christensen? How bad is that shoulder injury? And that's not very good for an offensive lineman like himself, because, you know, you're pushing with your hands and you're putting pressure on your shoulders. How bad is that shoulder injury? So do you know, is Icky going to be moved to left guard then? Could that be a possibility? So do you know, so it's like multiple scenarios, right? Multiple scenarios when it comes to this rebuild. But I think that what I've put on Twitter is a start. It's a start of what I think could be a true rebuild. And I'm not necessarily saying that you got to go for every one of those free agents. I'm not necessarily saying you got to sign every one of those free agents. But if you can grab 1 or 2, 3 guys out there to bring in some talent, some veteran help, it will help when you bring in these other draft picks. So, and it also depends on the cap space, and you're going to have to make moves in the cap space when you look at the Carolina Panthers cap space right now, which I'll show you real quick. You might be able to get a 5th or a 6th for him. Sure. I think so too. Like if we look at this cap space, right? So let me manage the roster real quick. So let's say you trade Brian Burns. Let's just say this. You trade Brian Burns, right? So like I did in my mock draft. Go to Seattle Seahawks. And let's see if it'll let me do draft picks. Maybe not. Might not let me do draft picks. Let's see. No, it doesn't. Let's just say we traded him and we got a 1st and a 3rd. Okay, let's just, for example, since it won't let me do draft picks. Okay. Oh wait, it's in 2023, so let's do it 2024. Okay, perfect. 2024. Okay. So he's not even on there. So you can't even trade him. So you would have to tag him and trade him. So let's just say, let's just say you trade Hayden Hurst. I don't know. Let's just say you trade him. We'll just process trade. Okay. You traded Hayden Hurst. You trade away Dante Jackson. We'll just say to the Buffalo Bills, something like that. Okay. All right. And then who else did I say trade away? All right. Let's say you trade away Von Bell to Green Bay. All right. Process trade. Okay. All right. Let's just say we trade away. Let's say we trade away Miles Sanders too. Let's say we trade him to we trade him to Minnesota. Okay. Let's say we trade Ian Thomas to Minnesota as well. And then let's say you trade away Terrace Marshall. We'll go like I did in the draft. We'll do Chicago Bears. All right. And then let's go with, I think that's the only, those are the only guys I would want to trade. So basically, if we trade those guys away, we saved 5.9 with Hurst. We saved $6 million with Dante. Von Bell, 7. Miles Sanders, 3. Okay. Ian Thomas, 3.6. Terrace Marshall, 1.4. Okay. What is this app? This is called the Spot Track. Spottrack.com. So this is just an example, right? This is just an example, but that's how much money you would save. Total available cap, 248 million. Team total cap, 180. Cap space, 67. Okay. Okay. But we're still, but right now, now, if you do the Brian Burns thing, it could be different. Because if you tag him, you released him, though, you save no money. Okay? You released him, you save no money. I know that. I know that. I was just showing an example. But, again, if it's me, I'm looking to trade Dante Jackson. Okay. Let me hit a reset here. Because what I would do if it's me, like, all right, we trade Brian Burns, we get some draft capital, right? But if we're going to talk about cap space, these are the guys that you got to look to trade here. You got to look to trade Dante Jackson. You got to look to trade Ian Thomas. I mean, if you can trade CJ Henderson and Jeremy Chin, that's great. Let's say they do trade Adam Thielen. Let's say they trade Von Bell. Let's say we're just throwing these names that I've seen been thrown around. These are just names that, all right, so let me let you make sure y'all understand this. Every person I'm throwing into this trade right now are people's names that I've seen get thrown around about trades. Okay? All right. That's really it. I haven't seen really anybody else's name being thrown around. But if you trade those guys, okay, I mean, you're saving 2, 1, 3, 2. Okay, so 2, 1.3, so 3.3, 6.7. Nine, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 million. And again, it all depends. It all depends. But you got to save cap space. You're going to have to save cap space coming into 2024. Because right now, in 2024, you only got 39. And when it comes to the free agent market in 2024, dude, if you're looking at the wide receiver position, I mean, so market value for these guys in 2024, which I'm surprised at. Okay, so let's look at Mike Evans, market value. 24 million. So the market value is at saying 4 years, $96 million. Yep. Okay. You go to another guy that we could target. All right. So we go to, which I mentioned, Marquise Brown. Market value, 4-year, 59 million. But I've seen his projected contract around 1 year for 12 mil. All right. I mean, if we go to another guy that we could target, Calvin Ridley, 4 years, 68 million, $17 million in cap space. I mean, these are guys that we could target. I'm not necessarily saying that we're going to be able to afford them, though. T. Higgins, 4 years, 66, $16 million on average salary. We can look at Michael Pittman if you want. 4-year, 90 mil, 22.7 million. So, I mean, that's just the wide receiver market values. You know, I mean, if we looked at the offensive guard, it's going to be the same thing I was mentioning earlier. It's just, let's look at the best values. I mean, we might be able to see it by position too. No, it's not going to give me that. All right, well, it's all good. But again, guys, that is my blueprint. Again, starts from the top and you work your way down. So appreciate everyone joining the live stream. Make sure you pound that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Click that post notifications bell so you don't miss out on any new content. I broke down my blueprint. Obviously, that's more of a rough draft. I mean, I broke down the blueprint today. I think that what I came up with is, obviously there's just, when it comes to rebuilding an NFL franchise, there's multiple scenarios, there's multiple routes to go. And there's multiple storylines that go involved with that, right? With Carolina here, it's the owner stop meddling with football operations. It starts with firing Scott Pitter. It starts with figuring out the Burns ordeal, right? Whether you sign him or you tag him and trade him, whatever case may be, what value you can get out of him if you do decide to trade him. Bringing those offensive weapons in, rebuilding that offensive line, right? Bringing in the right personnel, the right GM, the right head coach, bringing in a GM like Rob Loebman or Adam Peters, right? Those kinds of guys. Or, when it comes to the head coach, for me, it's just somebody that's a culture changer. We haven't had that, and that's what we need. We don't need any more yes men here, right? And then, of course, it comes down to the cap space and the free agent market and the value of these players. Can we afford them? Who do we trade away? What players should we look to trade away? I broke all of that down. I think as best as I could. I tried to put as much detail into this as I could in today's live stream. So I hope everyone did enjoy today's live stream. But as always, guys, I'll see you tomorrow. And as always, y'all know what to do. Keep pounding. Peace.